All right, so continuing on from the work that we did before the break, we had started expanding brackets, and I just want to kind of take that a little bit further and show you slightly more complicated versions of expanding brackets. So this is one. The question says expand and simplify, so we need to multiply out the brackets. However, there isn't two brackets to multiply out, so the whole essence of this question comes from the power. Okay, so if you had like 5 squared, for example, that would mean you have 2 5s and you multiply them. Or 8 squared would be 2 8s and you multiply them. Okay, so you use that process here. If you have 2y minus 7 squared, it means you have 2 of them. So you have 2y minus 7 and you have another 2y minus 7. Okay, so that's what the square means. It means there's 1 of them, 2 of them. Now we're back to the questions that we did, that I just corrected for homework, where the rule is you split the first and multiply by the second. So I take this and I write it down here, and then I take this one and I split it up and I write it here. So I split the first bracket and I multiply it by the second bracket. So the second bracket is 2y minus 7 and 2y minus 7. Okay, so you split up the first bracket. So there's the first part of it. There's the second part of it, split. And then after the first part, I put in the second bracket. And after the second part, I put in the second bracket. All right. I'm then going to multiply this across the first bracket. So 2y gets 1, 2 multiplications. And the minus 7, 1, 2 multiplications. Okay. So the first one here, 2 times 2 is 4. And I've got a y here and a y here. So I have 2 y's, which is y squared. Then this 2y doesn't have a sign, so the sign is plus. I'm multiplying the plus 2y by the minus 7, so the signs are plus and minus. They're different, so my answer will be minus. The numbers, 2 times 7 is 14, and then just 1 y. So that's the first bracket done, so I move on to the second bracket. This 2y is a plus 2y, so I'm multiplying minus by plus, which is different signs, so the answer is minus. 7 by 2 is 14, and then the only letter is y. And then the last multiplication is the minus 7 and the minus 7, so those signs are the same, which means my answer will be plus, and 7 times 7 is 49. So now, same as I would have done in the other questions, I look and see if I have any simplifying. So I have a y squared, I only have 1. I have a y and I have a second one, and then I just have the 1 constant. So I can do a little bit of simplifying. So the 4y squared was on its own, so it stays. These two can be subtracted, meaning I have minus 28y, and then this is 49. Okay, so this question is absolutely identical to the questions that we did the Friday before the break, except for in the very, very, very first line. Okay, so it's written as a square, so you acknowledge the square and you write this bracket out twice, and now you're looking at a 2 bracket multiplication, so you apply your rule, which is split the first, multiply by the second. Okay, I think this is fine. I'm going to go through it just in case there's an issue with it, but I think you should be okay with this. So another example, again, it's expand and simplify. Okay, again, I'm multiplying a bracket by a bracket. Now, obviously, we will acknowledge the fact that this bracket has 3 terms in it, but it doesn't actually change the maths. So the rule is split the first, multiply by the second. So I'm going to take this x, and I'm going to write it here, and then I'm going to take the 3, and I'm going to split it from the x and write it here. I left myself enough room now. I might just go a bit further with that, hang on. Okay, so I'm going to split it just a bit further away and write it here. Okay, so now I've split the first bracket, and then the second half of the rule is to multiply by the second bracket. So I put the second bracket here, x squared plus 4x minus 1, and I put the second bracket here, x squared plus 4x minus 1. Okay, so split up the first bracket, there it is, split, and multiply by the second bracket. So now I'm going to take this x, and like I said, it's very similar, except I'm going to multiply it once, twice, 3 times. And I'm going to take the 3 and I'm going to multiply it once, twice, 3 times. So that's the only difference that having 3 terms in the second bracket makes, that when you do this multiplication part, you'll have to do 3 multiplications instead of just the 2. But the rule is the same. You still split the first, multiply by the second. Right, so this has an invisible 1, this has an invisible 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. Now I have an x and I have 2 more x's. So in total there I have 3 x's, which we write as x cubed. This 1x is a plus 1x, so I'm multiplying for my second multiplication, I'm multiplying the plus 1x by the plus 4x. So sign first. Signs are the same, which means my answer is plus. 1 by 4 is 4, and then I have an x here and I have an x here, which means I have 2 of them. And then the last multiplication in this bracket is the 1x and the minus 1. So I have a plus and a minus, so my signs are different, which means my answer is minus. I have a 1 multiplied by a 1, which is 1, and then I just have this x, so I just have the 1x. Alright, and that's the first bracket, 1, 2, 3 multiplications. Next, so there's an invisible 1 here. Oh, undo that, doing it green. There's an invisible 1 here, and it's also positive. Okay, so sign, number, letter. So the sign, 2 pluses, same signs, means my answer is plus. Number, 3 by 1 is 3, and the only letter is the one that's on the 1, which is the x squared. The next multiplication then is the 3 and the 4x. So signs, they're both plus, which means the signs are the same, so my answer is positive. Numbers, 3 by 4 is 12, and then the only letter is the one on the 4, which is an x. And then the last multiplication is the 3 and the minus 1. So plus and minus are different signs, which means my answer is minus. 3 times 1 is 3, and there's no letters. Okay, so let's see if we can simplify. So I have an x cubed, but I only have 1. I have an x squared. Yep, I have another one. I have an x, and I have another one. And then I have a constant on its own. So the 1x cubed has nothing to add or subtract to it, so it just stays as it is. In pink, I have the x squared, so I have a plus 4 and a plus 3. That makes 7 for my x squareds. In blue, I have my x's, so I have a minus 1 and a plus 12. That's plus 11 for my x's. And then the constant in green there is all by itself. Okay, so I suppose I just wanted to do those two. You can see of everything I've shown you today, very little of it is actually new. So how do you deal with a square? You write it twice. After that, you're splitting the first, multiplying by the second. You can have an expand where the brackets aren't. So all the brackets we've done up to now have been 2 terms and 2 terms. Obviously this one is not, but it doesn't change anything. Okay, all you're going to do is apply the rules exactly as I've taught them to you, except it will require 3 multiplications to expand the bracket instead of 2. It's the only difference. Okay, so I will send on the homework.